G'day Gear Junkies, Jason here. 2 weeks ago, Boss released their most ambitious pedal yet, the Plugout FX PX-1. Never before have they released a pedal that has the pedal market so divided in opinion. The Plugout FX is basically an interface that you can plug your guitar into and use plug-in algorithms that come from the Roland SoundCloud. These are made of classic Boss pedals, most of which are long extinct, and you can use them in real time. If you watched my channel for a while, you'd know that I have a collection of vintage Boss pedals. So I thought it'd be a good idea for me to compare the algorithms in this pedal against the classic Boss pedals that they're actually based on. I've picked out about 7 or so of the pedals that this can emulate, and I'm going to A/B them using a loop switcher. Now, I paid for this out of my own money, so all opinions you're going to hear are going to be my own. I reserve that right. But before I begin, if you like this kind of content, please subscribe. And if you want to support this channel, you can go to the Middle Age Gear Junkie store and purchase some merchandise, or you can also support me through Patreon, where I'm uploading additional content. The links are in the description below. Thanks a lot. So I'm going to do this video in 2 halves. I'm going to spend the first half of the video going through the sounds and comparing them against the vintage pedals. And the second half of the video is going to be talking about the pros and cons of the PX-1 and the controversy that is surrounding it. I'm not going to do anything about how to load the effects or the extra functionality that this pedal has. I might save that for another video if you guys are interested. I'm going to use 2 guitars throughout this demo, my Paul Reed Smith Custom 24 for humbuckers and my Deluxe Strat for single coils. So I'm going to start with the OC2 octave pedal. Now this pedal was notorious for tracking particularly badly on the lower strings. It was part of the, I suppose, charm of this pedal. Up high it works quite well. It gives you an octave below and 2 octaves below your dry signal. But when I start to play lower, it struggles to replicate some of those notes and really struggles when I hold notes as well. So it's going to be interesting to see whether the PX-1 here can replicate the glitchiness of the OC2. So that's pretty good. I'm going to add some distortion from the metalcore here and play a riff. Now I've got the VB2 vibrato plugged in. The PX-1 will allow me to do both latched and unlatched mode, so I'll demonstrate both of those. I'm going to start in latched, and if you allow me to indulge, I'm going to use some reverb and delay. Now I have the BF2 flanger plugged in. Now, from what I've heard, both this and the PH1R, which came out in the same year, are the 2 most requested pedals for a Wazacraft edition. So it's still very popular to this day. Now, when I play with flanger, what I like to do is play fairly minimally and let the effects sort of bloom out. Now I've got the DF2 plugged in. If you're wondering why these have different names, it's because my original here is the lawsuit version, and they had to change the name to Super Feedbacker and Distortion for legal reasons. All right, let's check out the feedback function. This is the CE2 chorus. I'm using the neck and middle pickups of the Strat for this one. Now I've got the Tremolo Pan PN2 pedal plugged in. This has 4 different modes. 2 of them are tremolo and 2 of them are panning modes. The tremolo modes are in mono, so I can demonstrate that through the loop switcher here. But because this loop switcher is not stereo, I'll have to do one at a time to demonstrate panning mode. So this is the slow gear. I've got the ML2 metalcore pedal for some distortion. And as you can hear, there's a bit of reverb in there as well. Now, if you've never used a slow gear before, they don't track particularly well. So there'll be times, if I play too fast, all of the notes will still come out at the same volume. It won't swell each one individually. So you have to play fairly slowly. It pretty much only has one usable setting, which is to have the sensitivity right down and the attack right up. So I think all of the models that I compared on the PX1 were pretty close, but I think some were closer than others. So the PN2 here, I thought that was pretty much identical. They did a really good job with that. The one I was probably most impressed with was the OC2. Now, the OC5, which came out a few years ago, had a mode on it called vintage mode. And when you put it into vintage mode, it's supposed to kind of replicate this with the glitchiness, but I don't reckon they quite nailed it. I think though in this, they did an even better job, and it had all of the sort of glitchiness that you would expect from the OC2. So I was super impressed with that one. So I noticed a bit of a difference with the DF2. I think that the PX1 version was chunkier and had a more full sound, where I think that the original had a bit more sort of upper mid bite. I actually like both sounds. They were both cool, but I did think they were a little bit different. I thought also that was a bit of a difference with the slow gear, and I might get in trouble for saying this, but I actually preferred the version on the PX1. And that could be possibly because this pedal is quite old and probably needs a service, I would say. It's lost a bit of sensitivity. So I just found that the PX1 version was a bit more consistent than the original. The modulation pedals are where I noticed the biggest difference. So the CE2 chorus here, I've been playing this pedal for years and years and years, so I really do know what this pedal sounds like. And to me, the PX1 version just sounded a bit watered down in comparison. It's like this has a little bit of extra effect level or something like that, but it just sounded a bit more full than the PX1. So you probably noticed that when I was demoing these pedals that I had the controls on the display here so that you could see where they were set. And I had them set pretty much exactly the same. And I did notice, again, a difference between the VB2 vibrato and the Plugout FX. It just felt like the vibrato was a bit more steep on this one. It just wasn't quite as, I don't know, natural sounding, I think, as the VB2. And the BF2 flanger, I thought these sounded a little bit different as well. Even though I had them set the same, it almost sounded like the Plugout FX, that the manual was set differently because it had more metallic sound than the original, which I thought sounded warmer. But these are sort of minor criticisms. I thought that all of these effects were in the ballpark. Some of them were pretty much identical. One of them, like I said, I thought was better. But I think in a few cases they're just not quite as good as the original. So let's look at some of the pros and cons of the PX1. Firstly, I'd have to say the quality of the effects are quite high. They were very, very similar to the originals. Some of them weren't exactly the same, but very, very close. And as a lot of people out there would say, the audience isn't going to know the difference. So the effect quality, I'd definitely put that in as a plus. Secondly, I'd have to say that it fills a lot of gaps on your pedal board. So you could set this up as a chorus pedal or a flanger or a drive pedal, compressor, delay pedal. I mean, you can have all of these extra effects on your pedal board by just having this one pedal. Thirdly, although this is not a cheap pedal, it's still a hell of a lot cheaper than buying a collection of vintage Boss pedals. Number 4, it always remembers the last settings for each different model that you use. So if I go back to the OD1, which I haven't used for this demo, it'll go back to the last setting that I used when I was on the OD1. Number 5, you have digital functionality, so you can actually manipulate some of the effects in ways that you couldn't with the originals. Number 6, you have MIDI compatibility, so you can unlock more potential with saving presets and stuff like that. So that's definitely a plus for people who want to use this in a live context. So let's go through some of the cons. Firstly, you can only use one effect at a time, and that's a bit of a bummer. I mean, I would like to be able to use the flanger and the delay at the same time, but you can't. Number 2, I don't really like the user interface. I don't like having to go through a bunch of menus and then having to scroll for ages to get it to go to the exact setting that I want. It is quite precise in that regard, but I want to be able to come up with settings a lot quicker than that. Number 3 is storage space. It can only hold up to 16 different effects on here at a time. Now, some of the different models that are coming out are a bit larger than others. So if you have a few of those on there, you'll be looking at 15, 14, or even 13 at a time. So you'll have to drop some. Also, as new models come out, if you buy them and this is already full, you're going to have to take ones off here to put the new ones on. Also, as far as I understand it, you can't actually delete the original 8 models that this comes with. And some of those models are like the Spectrum. Not many people are going to use that, but also the DS1 and SD1. Those 2 pedals are still made today. They're the 2 most common Boss pedals that you'll see around. They're the cheapest Boss pedals you can buy. There's no way that you're going to use this to replicate the DS1 or SD1. It just doesn't make any sense because, I mean, you can buy 6 SD1s brand new for the price of this. So why would you use this to replicate an SD1? And why would you have it so that you couldn't delete that model out of here to create space for a different model? That's a real head scratcher for me. Now, I might be wrong about that, so if I am wrong, let me know in the comments below. Number 4 is routing. So depending on what you're going to use this for will depend on where in your chain you'll put it. So if you're going to use it for, say, chorus or tremolo or delay, you might put it at the end of your chain. If you're going to use the drive functions like the DF2 or the DS1 or something like that, you'll probably put it somewhere near the middle of your chain. If you're going to use the octave effect or the slow gear or the compressor or the auto wah, you might run it closer to the start of your chain. So there's no real one optimal place to put this if you're going to use all of the effects. So, I mean, I've already heard people say that you may need to own a second one to have near the start of your chain and one to have near the end of your chain, which is just so impractical. So let's look at some of the controversies surrounding this pedal. Firstly, I want to say that I don't think it's a necessarily bad thing that they are capitalizing on their back catalog. I mean, put yourself in their shoes. I mean, everybody's saying you should re-release the PN2 and you should re-release the BF2 and all these other pedals. But that's a gamble. And what if they don't sell? So if they make a Waza version of the flanger, what if it doesn't sell? Then they're stuck with all this inventory, which costs loads and loads of money to produce. By doing it this way, they're not stuck with loads and loads of inventory of all these different types of pedals. They've got one type of pedal that they can load other effects into. So it's kind of smart from a business point of view. Several high-profile YouTube channels have expressed concerns about this pedal and what it represents. KDH has made it very clear that he's concerned about the whole microtransaction deal. You had Rhett Scholl, who's actually refused to review this pedal, and then CS Guitars, where Colin delivered a very impassioned speech. I've never seen him so upset and animated while talking about this. And a lot of it's to do with the fact that I personally don't mind that they're bringing out subsequent models that you pay about 10 American dollars for. I don't think that's a bad thing. Where I think, though, these guys may be right is that Boss can change the goalposts anytime they want. They can turn it from you own the license to these effects to now you have to pay a subscription. And locking you in to, if you start to rely on this pedal, for example, and you get locked into a subscription where you have to pay them a certain amount of money a year to access those effects, that's not cool. And although Boss haven't hinted that that's what they're going to do, it wouldn't surprise me if they did do it. If you look at TC Electronic with their tone print system, when that first came out, it was great. You could load in all of these tone prints that were made by other guitar players, that were made by TC Electronic themselves, and even made by famous guitar players. But then after a while, you had to start to pay for them. And that really sucked, and that put a lot of people off it. So if they change the system at any given time, it's going to disenfranchise a lot of people. And the whole idea that, you know, you have to pay to play, yeah, I totally understand the concern around that, and I just hope that other brands aren't going to go down that route. Some people have rightly pointed out that some of Boss's competitors have effects pedals like this that have way more effects on tap and are way cheaper, for example, the Zoom pedals. But here's the thing. Nobody ever says, I want a Zoom distortion, or I want a Zoom chorus. They might say, I want a Boss chorus. So Boss have developed over a long period of time a reputation for quality that a brand like Zoom just can't really replicate. And even if you're talking about Line 6, most of Line 6 stuff are emulations of other classic effects. So I think the target market for this pedal are going to be Boss fanboys. People who want access to all of these classic effects that Boss have had without having to pay secondhand prices. Myself, I'm not going to be selling my collection anytime soon. I like the fact that I own this pedal and I can mod this pedal, or I could sell this pedal. Whereas with this, you own the chassis, but you don't own the licenses to the effects inside. And like I said, they can always change them. So yeah, unfortunately, this is the world that we're living in at the moment. You can either vote with your feet by deliberately not buying it, and I wouldn't blame you if you did. But if you're after something like this that's going to give you access to all of those classic effects, then this might actually be up your alley. So it's for you to decide. So leave a comment below and tell me what you think about this pedal. Do you think it's a good idea or not? What other Boss pedals would you like to see them release that they can put into this thing? Do you think it's going to last? Are other companies going to copy? Any ideas about this particular topic? I'd be really interested to hear what you guys have got to say. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. If you want to support this channel, you can go to the Middle Age Gear Junkie store and purchase some merchandise, or you can also support me through Patreon, where I'm uploading additional content and previews to my upcoming videos. I've left the links in the description below. Other than that, my name is Jason. Have a wonderful day. See you later.